You can show buttons again by swiping inward.
We'll just try it here.
Okay, well your Facebook's live.
Okay.
And this one's just, it's showing me.
Oh, showing you at the very top of the screen there. Give us just a minute, everyone. We're practicing with some new equipment here.
I think, is it me? Yeah, okay. I'm trying to, John, you need to look
Okay, give me just a second here. We'll see.
Sure.
Okay.
Right there.
Right there it is. Okay, there.
There we go.
Now is it working?
Yep.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. We're down here at Las Vegas Federal Courthouse again. Today is day 15 in the Bundy trial. We've got some very breaking news, some very good news that's happening in this court today that we're going to try to update you. Right now, they're in a sealed procedure again, a sealed hearing. We spent about an hour and a half in court this morning. We didn't get started until after 9:15 this morning. We were supposed to get started at 8 o'clock. The judge was over an hour late. A lot of new motions have been filed over the last few days that we've been in this break. And last night, even another late night motion was filed by one of the defense attorneys for Ammon Bundy. We had biggest news today. We had 7 Brady violations that the judge has agreed, at least at this point, that has been committed by the prosecution. 7 of them. Them are just in open court. There are many more that are in this sealed dismissal that we haven't got to hear yet. And so the defense attorneys are scrambling up there. They're all excited on what's going on. A lot of smiles today. One of the other biggest things that happened today is that the judge ordered the jurors to go home today and tomorrow. The jurors are not supposed to come back until Wednesday, if at all. That's how she pretty much said it in court today, that the jurors are not to come back until Wednesday morning, if at all. So she mentioned that because of all these Brady violations and all this other stuff that we need to go over today and tomorrow in these sealed hearings, we may not be able to be in most of it, but she mentioned that this case could be a mistrial or a dismissal, and she didn't say that lightly because of everything that's been happening. She mentioned Gigley versus U.S. About police officers. Giglio. It's I always get these things right. Good thing I got help back here. But Giglio versus U.S. It's about police officers that have done things in the past that the defense has to disclose to the defense. The prosecution has to disclose this to the defense. They never did in none of these cases. We've got the other Supreme Court law. What was that one there? That
Brady versus Maryland.
Brady versus Maryland. That's a big one. 7 of these Brady violations were read off in court today, and many more that are being discussed behind closed doors right now. The way it looks, we're not 100% sure, but this case does not look like it's going to go any further. It looks like that it could be over with. We don't know. She also mentioned that I'm trying to go back to my notes here, but she also mentioned several things that, like FBI agent Gavin on November 10th created a new document that had not been seen before, but the stuff in the document had been seen, but this was a new document that was handed over to the defense on November 11th, and the prosecution's claiming that they gave this in a timely manner because it was created November 10th. But it actually, the information in it was all the way back until 2014 that was never disclosed to the defense. The threat assessments, the task force reports, the joint task force reports, the SWAT team that came from Los Angeles and Las Vegas, all those things were mentioned today. And none of this stuff was made public to the defense until now. The snipers were talked about over and over again. Emails from Dan Love, the judge was not even for sure yet if those emails from Dan Love had been turned over to the defense as even of the day, and she ordered this back in November to be turned over. There are so many violations that have been brought up today that this case should be dismissed with prejudice. But we're going to see what happens. We're not allowed back in the courtroom now, so we're just going to be waiting outside the courthouse here and let's see if we get a chance or get a sneak peek of what's going on in there off and on throughout the day. But it looks like the rest of the day and all day tomorrow will definitely be in a lot of sealed procedures and sealed hearings here, why these defense attorneys and the prosecutors argue this out. One of the things I observed from the prosecution team today, the prosecution team was not their jolly self. They was not smiling at all. They were literally over there shaking in the prosecution table. They were conversing a lot among themselves, discussing what they were going to say, and Steve Myrie did not say a word in open court today. It was all left up to Daniel Seish. He was the only one that did any amount of argument, and he pleaded with the judge to give him at least 45 minutes to give a rebuttal to some of this. He says the prosecution team definitely has a different side than what the defense has, and we want at least 45 minutes to rebuttal this. The judge went in and she said, I thought you already answered most of these. And he says, well, there's a lot of new stuff and we got to answer a lot of stuff. So the rest of the day is going to be very, very tense. We're going to be waiting down here and see what happens. See if this judge does give us a dismissal or a mistrial in this case, or if we're going to move forward. But right now, the jurors are not going to be back again until at least Wednesday at the soonest. So we've got another week here. It looks like that it's just prolonging on. The case is not going. The jurors are not there. We're at day 15. We're in the middle of December. When is this case going to end? That's the big question. And let's pray that the right thing is done and it is dismissed with prejudice and that this case will not continue. We'll have you some more updates throughout the day. We've got some new equipment here we're trying to test out, so hopefully it's all working on that end. But other than that, we're going to sign off for now, and we'll be back as soon as we get any information or new news from the courthouse.
Let me say something, John.
Yes.
Can I say something?
Sure. Kenny Rhodes here again from Michigan.
Yeah, I'm down here. We went and picked up John at the airport last night and brought him back in. He was sick last week, and he made me sick too because I had to go to California and get over this flu. But John will not ask you, but
Step into the light.
But still a little bit of money every now and then to help John out because I know that the plane ticket back home is not cheap. He spends all his time. He's got 11 kids at home, and I mean,
Crying.
11 children, 11 children at home and 5 kids. The kids are the goats. But if you can send a little bit of money to John, I'd appreciate it. I gave him $5. That's all I had. So all of you take care of John, and y'all all have a great day. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. Kenny got to sit in the courtroom today for once. He's a witness in this case, and he hasn't been permitted in the courtroom. But because of the day without the jurors, he could sit there unless the jurors were in. So he got to see a little bit of this stuff going on today, and it's pretty exciting to see that this case might be wrapping up.
Yeah, they don't have a case. That's the problem. They don't have a case. And we're down here at the bottom of the tyranny towers because that's exactly what it is. Because now we can't even go back in because they don't want the public to hear what they got to say now. So they're all putting it under seal again. So if the truth's going to be heard, why does it need to be sealed where the news, nobody can hear it and put it out what they're doing?
I guarantee you it's not the defense that wants this sealed. We would like it to be public. We want to expose. That's what the whole thing's about, is exposing government tyranny, government overreach, and what's going on here. We want it exposed. We want the public to see this. But the prosecution and the judge definitely does not want this to be made public. It's an embarrassment to them for what they've done all along. All the charges have been stacked. It just shouldn't have happened in the very beginning.
Absolutely. Okay, John, you're doing a good job.
Well, thanks a lot.
I'll mess it up.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. We'll be back as quick as we know of any new information.
All right, that's a wrap.
Okay, John. Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're at the end of day 15 down here in Las Vegas Federal Court. We'll give everybody a moment to get on here and give you guys an update. It's actually a nice day down here in Las Vegas. I left some cold weather in Montana yesterday. I'm feeling tons better, but it's another eventful day down here in Las Vegas for the federal court. We started out this morning. We had about an hour late before the judge got in, so we sat in the courtroom for over an hour before the judge even showed up. She went right into these motions that have been filed for dismissal, mistrial type motions. So it was a big morning. We spent about an hour and a half talking about all these motions the different attorneys had filed, from Morgan Philpott, Ammon Bundy's attorney, and Ryan Payne's attorney, Ryan Norwood. After that hour and a half, the prosecution wanted to go into a sealed part of the hearing, and the rest of the afternoon has been sealed, so we're only getting bits and pieces of what's actually going on there. The big news is that we have no court now until the 20th of December. The 20th of December. So that's a Wednesday. That's all of this week we have no court. The first part of next week we have no court. And then after that, we have a Christmas break. So the jurors will be out of court almost this whole month if this trial continues. To me, personally observing here, I don't see how this case is going to go one step further. I think after all this week and a half here now of these next motions and everything being heard, this case, I believe, will be dismissed. It hasn't been done yet, but that's what I believe. There were over 7 Brady violations a day that were made public that the government failed to disclose to the defendants in this whole case. And there's even more Brady violations than those 7 that we're not even being told about yet. Some of the defense attorneys say there's multiple Brady violations and others. The judge even mentioned with this dismissal, if it happens, she said that it's double jeopardy. And she even mentioned that word double jeopardy. That to me and what the attorneys have told me is a big deal. If that's the case, this case will be dismissed with prejudice and will not be brought up again. It'll be over with. So that's what we're all praying for. We know that having a jurors out so long without being in the courtroom, not hearing any evidence after weeks and weeks like this, it definitely cannot continue the way it's going. The prosecution today was literally vivid. They were upset. Obviously, Myrie never even said a word in the courtroom. He just sat there at the table. He was shaking at times, literally shaking. I was sitting across the courtroom and I could see Mr. Myrie, his hands just shaking at the table. Sheesh didn't have the smile on that he normally does. He was all frowns and he was agitated the whole time. He was just begging the judge for more time to file these motions to counter what the defense said, and even the judge even mentioned, well, you done countered some of these, and didn't you answer this already prior, and I don't know if you should be able to answer it again. And they just kept going back and forth. It was a little bit hard to follow and understand with what they were all totally saying, but she finally granted the prosecution's request to answer these written motions up until the 20th. The 20th is the first day we will be back in court. The jurors will not be back on the 20th again. So we have several days off here while we're waiting on motions to be filed behind the scenes here. And then we will be back in court on the 20th of December. And then the 21st was our last day of court anyway this year. And we were going to come back on January the 2nd. It doesn't look like it's going to go that far again. It looks like this case has come to an end. We're just waiting on the answers from the judge to give this motion, to give her answer. But that's the way it looks to us observing here that this case is pretty much officially over. It just needs to be made public. So other than that, we only got an hour and a half in court today, and that was it. We are not going to be back in court until the 20th, and we're hoping that is not totally sealed either, that we'll actually get to sit in the courtroom on the 20th and hear what's going on here. Ammon Bundy did walk out of the courtroom today again. He's still wearing an ankle monitor. Ryan Bundy walked out of here, Ryan Payne. So at least those guys are not sitting in prison right now. Last week, Mel Bundy got released, Dave Bundy got released, Joe O'Shaughnessy and Jason Woods, they all got to go home for now. And we're hoping and praying that they don't have to come back to court at all the way things are going at this point. If this case is dismissed with prejudice, it cannot be brought back up. The judge, if she's talking the way she's talking now with double jeopardy, this case will be over and cannot be retried again. And also, there's rumors and talk about the misconduct of these prosecutors like Steve Myrie, possibly losing his job over this case. Sanctions being put on some of these prosecutors for the misconduct and the hiding of all this evidence for the last 4 years pretty much here, keeping these guys incarcerated for 2 years without on the pretense of them being dangerous when they were not even in danger. All this was brought up today in that hour and a half that we were allowed to be in the courtroom, such as these threat assessments and these different 302 reports that just popped up out of the blue, the emails that that Dan Love hasn't been provided to the defense team yet. Just on and on, that these things that are missing, multiple Brady violations, and we've seen it today firsthand that this case has come to a complete stop for the time being, and we're just going to pray that it doesn't continue and that we definitely get this just full dismissal like these guys deserve from day one. It never should have continued. Again, I don't know. I'll have as many updates as I can down here. I don't know how many we'll have. We'll see what we can do as we get information. There probably won't be a whole lot of information in the next few days that we know of, unless something just leaks out. And right now, we're just waiting down here patiently ourselves and waiting to see what's going to happen. Got Brand here.
Let me ask real
Yes.
quick. Does this mean that the other charges, the pleas that have been taken, will those charges be vacated?
That's a good question. I don't know about the plea deals, but I know that the two other defendants have big cases for retrial or having their whole case taken out, such as Greg Burleson and Todd Engel. I know that's the rumors and talks around court here from the other defendants' attorneys. So we know those cases were wrongfully convicted.
One more thing, the Oregon case, different jurisdiction claim there, but are there people tied in through like BLM and others that would be included in this as a kind of a joint operation between
Well,
here
I know
and there?
some of the FBI agents that's involved here were involved there, definitely. So the BLM agents, I'm not positive of those. That was kind of a separate case. But we do have some of the same FBI agents involved in this case that were involved there.
And how about how far does it all go back together here, back to D.C.? The same with Oregon,
This has been a big cover-up all from the very beginning. It definitely has been, all the way from here. They knew what was happening out there in Oregon. It was a total setup for what the government did to them in Oregon. It was a total setup here. It was even brought up in court today again about entrapment. And there was definitely entrapment in this case all the way back in 2014. We've got a prosecuting attorney, Nadia Ahmed, that's sitting as a prosecutor that was at the Bundy Ranch back in 2014. This corruption goes very, very deep.
It does.
It does, yes.
I just want to make a couple quick comments here. You know, John Lamb's been at this for well over a year. All the people that you have been seeing out here protesting have been doing this for some time. This is a reason that we're being successful. I'm going to tell you right now that had not we had this grassroots movement with all these wonderful people that have come from so far, like John Lamb, and spent all this time and effort, we would not be having the success that we are having today. Now, what John just talked about is a perfect example about the average person not having access to the courts. The Bundys are very high profile. The Patriots are very high profile. They've had literally hundreds of followers out here at any given time. We've been able to bring attention to this situation, so we're getting true access, what we call true access to the courts. All right, all this fraud, all this manipulation is being brought out. Okay, so but what about the little guy that doesn't have this sort of support? It happens all the time, all over this country, not just federal, but also state too. So what's going to happen is, this hopefully will set a precedent and it will continue. And, I think we all pledge our honor and our lives and liberty for freedom and for access to these courts, because that's really where it's at. If they close off the courts to us, then we... Okay, Rick, call back later, would you please? So anyhow, there's something that I would like to announce. I'm getting closer and closer to announce my candidacy for sheriff of Clark County, Nevada. I have floated the idea. I have got some calls. I have some really good supporters now. 3 major outfits here in town, and one is a former city councilwoman. And they actually want me to run for sheriff. I'm going to have to clean up, of course, and stuff like that. But if I do, and if this turns out the way I hope it turns out, I will ensure that everybody has access to these courts. And when we run into a situation like that, I will do everything in my power to stop it, so the average little person can actually defend themselves. And that's the main thing I wanted to announce. Plus, this is a great man right here. I'm serious. This is a great, no, this is a great man. And there's so many other great people that have put forth a huge effort, both financially and their time, away from their families. And without people like this, we would not be having the success that we're having right now.
Well, the main thing with any of these court cases that I see is that you don't want to be silent. I've heard this over and over again. They're afraid to speak up before their sentencing because they're thinking the judge is going to go more lenient on them. You want these cases in the public.
Exactly.
You don't want to be silent. The more silent we are, the more they just run you over. And that's what's happening in multiple cases, not just in the Bundy cases here. I've seen these happen in other cases, such as the 93-year-old doctor here. Same thing happened to him. They put a fear in you. And one of the things they did to the 93-year-old doctor is they even tried to steal his home after the judge had ordered him to be released. They already stole $2.5 million, and they told him that they would go away if he would sign his house over. He didn't do it, but they said, you don't have to do it, but we recommend you doing it. You sign your home over to us, and then if you do that, we will just go away and leave you alone and let you die in peace.
And you brought this to the forefront. You were one of the main guys. You took like a half dozen people up there on another floor when his trial was going on and elevated this awareness to this 93-year-old man. And you'll never get anything going backwards. You never will. John and I both know this. You cannot rely upon the good graces of these people, as they don't have any good graces. You've got to be in their face. You've got to be out front. You've got to protest, and you've got to support these people. And seriously, this is the man that took a half dozen people onto another floor to represent this 93-year-old doctor. Otherwise, I'm sure they would have treated him horribly, like they had planned on taking his house. I know they took millions of dollars from him in a coin collection that he's not...
$2.5 million.
$2.5 million that he'll probably never get back. So, okay, is it all about the money? Is it all about justice? You can decide for yourself. But I'll tell you right now, in that case, it's all about the money, making an example from somebody. And to the credit of John Lamb and others that went up there with him, got it before the people, and now look what's happened.
Fear, intimidation, and dread is the definition of terrorism.
It definitely is, yes.
Let me ask you about, as far as the setup again. In Oregon, there was 19 people that were working for the feds up there?
We had at least 15 that we know about that were informants working at the refuge against the Bundys.
Then we see people came in at Bundy Ranch in 2014 and kind of co-opted some stuff, I think, as well.
Well, we know that there's numerous ones, that probably more than that. We've heard his numbers as high as 60 government informants, 4 FBI agents and BLM officers down in the Wash area carrying guns. at the same time. So it was definitely a setup.
There was a lot of consciousness there as far as watching other people to be aware if anybody was going to try to set something up. I know that the word was passed around to keep an eye on everybody, and if anybody did try to, pull off some incidents, then it was to surround them and stop that from happening.
And I think that's what stopped it from being a false flag. Lieutenant Colonel Potter and myself, and we were absolutely convinced that was meant to be a false flag that went bad, and a lot of people losing their lives, and the federal government coming in and rounding up everybody, probably killing everybody. And that's what they actually really wanted. The day before the actual standoff out here at the McCarran International Airport, we had Eric Holder, we had Mr. Gillespie, and we had Harry Reid all meeting together on the tarmac the day before the standoff. So they had come up with some plans. Somebody really likes you.
Somebody's really calling. I'm not for sure who it is.
But we took a long look at it. Lieutenant Colonel Potter and I put out a video, and really the evidences that come forth since, how they have really pushed the Bundy family, trying to get them to commit an act of violence so they could come in and wipe them out. Yes. And so they have been trying all this time. So, yeah.
Well,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
On the 11th, the sheriff and Cliven Bundy had a meeting, and it was already determined that the federal agents were standing down. But instead, they chose to embed. They called it shelter in place, is what one of the witnesses said inside the courtroom. And do you feel like that was more to really stir the pot?
It definitely was. It was a scare tactic for sure, to scare these agents, or even people that were just civilians there, acting like there was such a big threat when there wasn't. Instead of sending them back to safety somewhere, they kept them there, and they said shelter in place. One of the witnesses testified to that.
Yes.
And that was a big turning point into this case, that I think the judge seen that this was a setup.
Can you expound on that a little bit more?
One of the agents testified here that that one night there was a threat assessment.
National Park
Service.
Yes.
The Park Service thought there was going to be an attack by the Bundys to get the cows back one night. Supposedly, they hyped this all up, and they told all the employees there that they could not go home back or to their hotels in Mesquite. They said shelter in place because it's, we're going to get attacked tonight. Well, it never happened. They never got an attack, and all it did is hype it. Well, the next day, they were told by the sheriff's department, the Bundys were, that it was all over with. The cows were going to be released. They never left. The BLM officers never knew they were going to leave. The sheriff had information, said that they were going to leave, and they never did.
And Sheriff Gillespie said that up on stage there, he said he got a call en route that the cows had already been released at that point. And the protest was never about an encounter with federal agents. It was a protest to call the sheriff to stand and do his job.
Well, the sheriff said they're going to be released. What do? They go over there. They wasn't going over to protest. He's going over to get the cows and turn them back on the range. The cows were thirsty. They were hungry.
That's what he said.
They've been krailed up for quite some time.
I don't know much about cows, but they were drained. They were empty.
Yes.
Okay, and there was all kinds of issues going on. There was a bunch of the calves that they calved out in the compound, and they got all stomped on by the other cows because they were in such a confined space. But I want to say one other thing about Mesquite and Bunkerville. I know for a fact that they commandeered one of the big hotels. They had it all taped off that nobody could go in or out except for the federal agents. They were terrorizing that town. They were literally going in groups of vehicles of like a dozen, and they would not stop at any stop sign or stop light. Okay, once one started to go through, they would all keep going through. I talked to three law enforcement, two detectives, or not detectives, deputies, and one trooper there in Mesquite, and they actually came up and started talking to myself, Roy, and thanking us for what we had done, and they started telling us different horror stories like the one I just mentioned. The trooper actually didn't even know that the Gold Butte allotment had been shut down. He was out with his kids on a when they, next thing you know, they were surrounded by BLM agents with AR-15s pointed at him and his children. Okay? So this was the type of stuff that the federal government was doing in Mesquite and Bunkerville to those people that live there.
Yes.
And the highway patrol agents that live out there, they live local generally.
Yeah, that particular one does. There's, we had the one on the stand, which was from basically that went out there.
She was a sniper?
He was going 120 miles an
Yeah.
hour, supposedly to protect his partners and everything, and gets up there and starts directing traffic. But the trooper that I'm actually talking about lives right there. He was extremely grateful. They went out of their way. We were at the gas station. They crossed over to come and see us, which I thought we were going to get arrested at first. But he approached me from some distance with his hand extended to give me a handshake. And then the other two county deputies came over also, shook our hands and praised us and thanked us for what we had done out there in that protest.
Yes. Well, for everybody that doesn't know, again, one last time, there's no court down here this week like we thought there was going to be. It has been totally postponed this whole week. We ended in a sealed hearing today. And the next court date that we know that we're going to have is December the 20th, and that's to determine of this dismissal or mistrial or what we're going to get, but we have no jurors this week or next week at this point. This case has come to a complete standstill at this time until these motions get heard and some decisions get made. So that's where we're at. We'll keep you posted as much as we can the next few days. If any new information comes out, it could happen at any moment. We just don't know yet.
Keep praying.
Yep.
Keep praying.
Thanks a lot. God bless.